it's almost Easter break. So I'm sure you all are excited about that. So we're finishing up the chapter today, which means we're going to quiz tomorrow. And at the end of today's live stream, which I'm going to keep short so you have time to study for the quiz tomorrow. But at the end of today's live stream, I'll give you specific details on what to study for your quiz. Okay, so I'm going to give it another minute or so just to let people log on that were wanting to stream this live. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to throw those in on the comments and I'll address them as they come up. All right. I've got a few people in here right now. That's good. Everybody doing good? Working your way to the weekend? I gave it a few extra seconds just because I have it is unstable. There we go. It was rebooting. Okay, so let's get right into it now. So, and connection's unstable. If this gets laggy, we'll just roll with it. Basically everybody in America is on their Wi-Fi right now because everybody's at home for the most part. All right, so racism still existed even after civil rights victories. After the Civil Rights Act of 64, after the Voting Rights Act of 65, that didn't erase all of the racism in America. Now, it's not to say everybody in America was racist, right? And that's not to say that there weren't a lot of people who supported the civil rights movement, but that was against integration, was against civil rights, and was for segregation, that it caused some major societal problems. And one societal problem that occurred in 1965, it was the Watts riot. So I don't know if anyone knows about the Rodney King riots that occurred. We'll talk about those when we get to the 90s. But this is very similar to the Rodney King riots. And in the Watts riot, there was a man who was an African American, and he was beaten by a white police officer. There was enough tension already in society that this was just the spark that was needed for the powder keg to explode. And so riots broke out, 1,400 National Guardsmen and 1,500 law enforcement officers to put down this rioting. So there were race riots occurring during this time period. There was just a lot of racial and social unrest in America. So to combat this, the Kerner Commission was appointed, and you answered some questions about the Kerner Commission in yesterday's homework. And the Kerner Commission was studying urban riots and trying to find the cause of these urban riots. And the commission blamed racism, also pointed to the need for better inner city jobs and better public housing. So that was the finding, or those were the findings of the commission. However, the things that the Kerner Commission suggested. So that caused some issues. All right. Something else that was occurring during this time period was there were several movements that were so the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s was a movement of black pride, and it was new music, new literature, poetry, art, all of that focused on showing pride in one's African American heritage. The Black Power movement is very similar to this in nature. It's less artistic and more political or social. And a major figure in the been arrested, I believe, for burglary, and he was reformed in prison. So Malcolm X went to prison. He reformed while he was in prison, and he converted to Black Islam, also known as the Nation of Islam. And this is different than Islam. This is, I would call it a rival sect. It doesn't believe in, Muslims believe in the Prophet Muhammad. Black Islam preaches a black Muhammad whose name is Elijah Muhammad. So he's the Prophet Elijah Muhammad empowerment. So Malcolm X originally is a major figure in this movement, but over time he becomes disenchanted with this movement, and he doesn't like the separatist message the movement is preaching. So he goes to Mecca, and he actually becomes a moderate conventional Muslim, and he kind of breaks ties with the Nation of Islam. A black Muslim from the Nation of Islam actually assassinates Malcolm X. So Malcolm X is assassinated from a rival faction in his own group. His assassination is just it's a bad time in America. He's a very beloved figure in America at this time. Also, another figure your book doesn't really mention, Robert Kennedy, and so we have three major figures in the civil rights movement, racial tension, but it's also a time where progress is still being made in the civil rights movement nonetheless. Right, and so that closes out the chapter, and that closes what we'll be covering. So solid on is Brown versus Board of Education case. Second thing would be Rosa Parks and bus desegregation. Third thing would be Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the fourth thing would be the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So if you study those things and just have a general idea of the course of the civil rights movement, you should be able to do very well on the quiz. All right, before I close this out, just to give you extra time to study today, are there any questions that anyone has? All right, well, if you think of any, send me an email. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, have a great day, guys.